What we're doing, we're sinking the damn ship.
Man, what to say about this movie that hasn't already been said? It's a classic. It's one of the most highest-grossing films ever. It's made by one of the best living directors at the peak of his abilities, with two of the best stars at the time, two of the most attractive people at the time, some of the biggest sets ever created. It's one of the largest scale movies ever, and it shows on screen. This is a movie that I'm astounded, shocked, looks as good as it does still to this day. It's pushing 30.
Music on! His name is James Cameron, the bravest pioneer. No budget too steep, no sea too deep. Who's that? It's him, James Cameron.
Systems are normal. You guys hearing the song okay up there?
It's just crazy to look at how big the scale of this is. They almost built the actual Titanic as a replica to film on because they wanted that level of historical accuracy. It's one of the biggest things in history, one of the biggest ocean liners to sink, and one of the coolest that we found. It's really fascinating to learn about the Titanic and how it was built, how it was operated, and how it was sunk. And this movie does a great job at illustrating most of that pretty accurately. And it does all of that while housing three main stories in it. I think one of the best parts of this movie, and one of the most genius parts, and the reason why I think it made so much money, and why it was in theaters for so long, is because it took one of the most famous and recognizable tragedies, the Titanic, and paired it with a fantasy. Now, I'm not saying it's a fantasy like Lord of the Rings. There's not elves on the Titanic, and we all know that. But it's similar to the fantasy of Superman, the I'm not going to grow up, I'm not going to do what you're telling me, I'm going to fly away because I'm Superman. It's similar to that, except a little bit more grounded in a human element, because we have the two main characters, Jack and Rose, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, and these two are the fantasy elements. Leonardo DiCaprio is what every guy wanted to be, or wants to be, at that time and even now. He's a good-looking, strapping young man who got his way onto the ship. He made his own luck. He is a survivor, as he says. He got onto this amazing, luxurious ship, something that he definitely didn't deserve, but he did. And then he had a rich, beautiful woman fall for him. He made that happen. He made his own luck, and that's a fantasy for a lot of people, just that itself. But then Kate Winslet, on the other side, is another fantasy. This beautiful woman who could marry this gorgeous man, or she could turn from that path into the Leonardo DiCaprio, Jack Dawson route and make her own destiny and be swept off her feet. That's a fantasy too. Everybody wants to be swept off their feet romantically. So there's two major fantasies in this. A poor from nothing person makes it big, and a rich person gets swept off their feet and decides to do something with their lives. It's actually a pretty dramatic story in that way.
You know I don't like that, Rose.
She knows.
What for you, sir?
We'll both have the lamb. Rare with very little mint sauce, eh?
Wait, Jack! Wait! Stop, Jack!
And then there's the third subplot, which is, I think, my favorite. And it's the captain, played by King Theoden. Awesome, awesome actor, Bernard Hill. I love him. And I love his story, too, because it paints him as a relatable character to some degree. I mean, there's a lot of historical record about how it was a moonless night. It was perfectly calm, which is incredibly rare on the Atlantic. So spotting an iceberg would have been borderline impossible until it was very, very close. And there was like some spatial anomaly happening. So he isn't to blame, but the movie does paint him as a figure that wants to be remembered. There's a great scene when he's talking to one of the designers of the ship, I think. I can't remember his name now, but the guy is basically like, hey, we want to make records. We're going to go fast and get to land. You're going to retire a hero. Everybody's going to love you. They're going to love this ship. They're going to write headlines.
Make the morning papers. Retire with a bang, AEJ. good man.
And then ultimately that dooms the ship because it was just going too fast in an ice field. He even has a message in the movie in his hand that says ice warning. And there's a couple other things historically that happen. The radio guy gets a message about ice that they kind of brush aside. There's a lot of ice warnings historically for the ship that they completely ignored. So a lot of people were kind of complacent with that. Not just the captain, but he's sort of the end-all of that. Everything ends with him, so I love that story. A lot of people will talk about the length, I'm sure. I don't really watch or read reviews about things when I watch them. I just like to enjoy them and not think about what other people are telling me to think. So I'm sure a lot of people talk about the length. It's 3 hours and 15 minutes. It's very long. And honestly, I didn't feel the length until the end. I think the first hour and a half, 2 hours is almost perfectly paced. The inception of this love story, Jack saving her from the Brit that falling off the stern, their kindling of the relationship, all the scenes of them together, the drawings, getting to know each other, the dinners, the parties. Their relationship works really well because we have so much time spent with it. That's one problem I frequently have with modern filmmaking, is that we just don't spend enough time to care about characters. And this one does that. This one has a ton of time spent with Jack and Rose. And so you can actually tell that these characters like each other. And that was great. I loved seeing the relationship bloom from this sort of awkward first encounter where she's going to kill herself and then doesn't, and their talking phase all the way up to where they're very comfortable with each other. And it works super well because we spend that time. And then the third act low point, the break into three, is one of my favorites I've seen recently. Every story hits a low. Bernard Hill, the captain, his ship's going down. That's a great low point. Leonardo DiCaprio gets arrested for something he doesn't do, and Rose is in shock and sort of believes that he may have done it. That's a great low point. I loved the sequence, though, when the Titanic gets the iceberg scrape. I think that was one of the most exhilarating moments of the film. Not just the actual hitting of the iceberg itself, the model, it's not super convincing. I didn't love it. It's all kind of blocky and clunky looking. And the model of the ship crashing into it, it looks like a model. It looks small. But, big but, the scene with the water flooding all these compartments is so well handled. The direction so tight. The sound design without music is spectacular. The constant cutting to all the characters watching things unfold or things happening to them. Them running into the watertight doors as they're closing slowly. It was awesome. That stuff is so great. The movie is so great. I loved it. I couldn't believe how much I liked it. I thought this would be okay. I really did. I was like, James Cameron, man, he made some great movies. Aliens, Terminator, Terminator 2. The man was a walking legend at the time making sci-fi. But this is a romance, and from what I've seen, it has some melodrama. The melodrama I'm not a huge fan of, but in the context of the movie, in the context of its 3-hour runtime, the melodrama works. I didn't have any moments where I was like, can this get on with it? Maybe in the last like 20 minutes when it's just stretching the 2 hours of when the Titanic went down. That's a little bit long in the tooth. I think you could have done something to trim that up. 10 minutes could have come out maybe, but man, it's just so well done. James Cameron, his direction is sharp. The filmmaking is just so good. James Cameron knows what he's doing, man. He moves that camera with purpose. He moves that camera with emphasis. He cuts so pristinely. The filmmaking is so great. The music, not my favorite. The music's not my favorite. And I think you could have trimmed a little bit. And while it is a hair dated, for 1997, the movie's 1 year younger than me. And I watched movies this year that look not just worse, but significantly worse. So I give this movie full credit, man. I loved it. I thought this was brilliant. Just wonderful filmmaking. Great storytelling, good character work, great pacing, solid script, fucking great structure, really fun, huge scale models, production is amazing. It deserved all the Oscars it won. It deserved all the money it got. It's a great fucking movie, man. I thought that was great. I really did. So next week is going to have to live up to a Titanic affair, and I've decided to watch something I've been meaning to watch for a long time. Nobody had any say in it, so you can go yourselves. It's Brazil. I've been meaning to watch this for years. I love Terry Gilliam's work, but I've never seen his magnum opus, Brazil, until now. So tune in next week, where I will maybe stop burping.